No.
Morning, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I went to even get like branded and everything.
Well done.
I did also completely forget that this was on, so I've been for a run this morning.
Amazing. You're doing
So I
more
had to get-
exercise than me, mate.
I had to get changed, do my hair a little bit.
Thanks for logging in, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes so we can gather some numbers. But morning all. Morning. If you're just joining, just going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to get settled in. But good morning and thanks for coming. See, the numbers are still going up, so just bear with us a tick more, please, before we kick off. Okay, so I'll make a couple of minutes past 10 now. So give it about 30 more seconds and we'll start off. But again, nice to see you all. Thank you for coming, and let's hope this is a great webinar. Just to say as well, Larry, it might look like you're in a padded cell there, but I can tell everybody that we're actually in the soundproof broadcasting room at Westcoast today. So Larry will be let out shortly.
We are in the same room, although it doesn't look like it from our backgrounds.
Right, I think we should kick off. So again, thank you everyone for turning up this morning. Appreciate the time. Got some exciting things in the making at Westcoast. So one of which is we've just celebrated our first year in business with Dell. The contract was started. We've started the ISG piece on the 4th of May, and obviously had the cheesy Star Wars launched for the May the 4th be with you. But thank you to everyone that's supported us since day one. It's been an amazing year. Quite a roller coaster, to be honest. It's fast, and you've got to move quickly. But with the surrounding team here at Westcoast, we've had a great year, and lots of partners are now starting to follow us for business and trust us with their work. So thank you for the support. It's been amazing. I think the investment at Westcoast has been the most exciting thing for me. And if you keep your eye on the socials coming up shortly, there's some new names coming on board. What we're trying to do is create a real sort of stability in the Dell channel, a people-led business where we can look after you from sort of end to end with personality, product, and lines of business. But it's as I say, keep an eye on the new stuff coming forward as we come into the summer. we're coming out fighting. So we're looking to disrupt the channel and be a service-led, people-driven division. Sorry, put my teeth back in. With the Apex model, it was another exciting point for us to say we were first to market in the UK to be able to distribute the Flex on Demand model. It took a lot of work to get this through, but you know, it's in a channel that's as busy as we have. It's nice to be first to market. So hopefully we can show support and basically handhold people through the Apex model and enable you from sort of end to end. Now, basically at Westcoast with the Dell model, we can cover CapEx, OpEx, and everything in between. So, you know, no stone left unturned. Welcome to part 2 of the Apex files. Now, some of the content in this segment will be repeated from last time, but we wanted to make sure you have a good standing and a good grounding to know exactly where to start from, and creating a bit of a technical community support level. With me on the call today is Adam Lawton from Dell and our very own Larry Smith. 2 gurus in the market, so you're in good hands today. I just wanted to cover off what's on the agenda today. So Adam, if you can flick on to the next slide, please. So as you can read the agenda for yourselves, but we just want to say how to get Apex to market in the main round, and why, what, who, and how to engage and when. Verticals, lines of business, where to sort of throw your darts. Make sure you're comfortable in your arena. We can support you in that. And what the available resources within Dell and ourselves at Westcoast, which is, as I say, is growing daily, monthly. So yeah, very exciting. But without further ado, I'll pass across to Adam Lawton. So again, thank you for coming with us today. Enjoy.
Thanks very much, Ollie, and nice to meet everybody today. So as I was very kindly introduced, my name's Adam Lawton. I'm responsible for the Apex channel business in the UK. So relatively new role. I've been in position around about 2.5 months now. Still learning lots, but it's a very exciting place to be, as kind of Ollie alluded to at the start. So what we'll do is I'll just talk a little bit around kind of why we've invested so heavily in Apex. Anytime you hear Michael Dell talk, it's usually about the second or third thing out of his mouth. It's a very strategic and important piece of our business. And what I'm going to try and do is just give a little bit of colour and background to why we're investing so heavily in that area. So the first is just to look at some of the trends that happen in the marketplace. And you know, we've worked very closely with IDC to understand this. And some of the things that we see is, for example, 92% of companies out there that were surveyed are now already multi-cloud. And what do we mean by that? It's consuming various clouds of different types. It could be some private on-premise cloud. It could be some hyperscaler, you know, AWS, Azure. It could be both of those. It could also be things like software as a service. So there's various ways that companies are now engaging. And the truth is that companies aren't hybrid cloud. They're very much multi-cloud. And that's very much the world that we're living in, with customers really choosing the kind of the best bits of technology to achieve their business goals based on actually what outcome they're trying to achieve, but also what's the right operating model to help them achieve that. What we're also seeing is a huge amount of investment in infrastructure at the edge, and that's really driving a lot of growth in the segment. And the last one is that, you know, we see from a sort of market growth, we're seeing a 23% growth in the infrastructure and cloud market over the next 5 years. And actually what we see is this trend. So if you look at today, you know, the split is roughly 63% in favor of on-premise, traditionally CapEx purchased infrastructure, versus the 34% in the hyperscalers and 3% in this little segment called private infrastructure as a service. Now, over the next 5 years, really what we're seeing is this market is growing, this 23%. However, one of the things that you notice is that the biggest growth area is this private infrastructure as a market area. And this is really where we're focused at with Apex. This is all about delivering not necessarily traditional, but modern IT infrastructure in a consumption model that customers consume where they want, be that on their own premise, in a hosting partner, or potentially in the hyperscaler as well. But the reality is most of it is focused in actual customer data centers or hosting partners. So what you'll notice is the traditional CapEx market is actually flat. You know, it's not really going to grow over the next 5 years. Going to decline very, very slightly. We see public cloud growing pretty well, but actually that Apex market, you know, that private infrastructure and service area is really growing by 80%, which is a very, very rapid part of the sector of the market that we want to address. And this is really, like I say, where we focus with Apex, giving people those modern infrastructures delivered in a consumption model, modern cloud consumption model, trying to get the best of both worlds that customers get from both the public cloud services and also traditional IT infrastructure. We're also hear from customers a number of challenges that they face as well. So, and again, some of these will be pretty familiar for you. But these are the three main ones that we hear when they're talking specifically around cloud services in particular. So obviously things like cyber is very, very prominent at the minute, and that's not really covered here, but that's definitely a consideration. But the first one is around economic uncertainty, and organizations have really, I think we've all seen it in our own back pockets around the impacts of inflation and interest rates, and actually the cost of capital now, the cost of borrowings going up, for example. And that has led organizations to want to try and preserve as much capital in their organizations as possible. It's meant that they're kind of shying away from traditional large purchases in favor of actually consumption models, which allow them to spread that risk more and keep more cash in their business. So that's certainly one trend we see. The other is around supply chain disruption. So we see again in the last 2 years, I think from a Dell standpoint, we wrote that out fairly well, but other partners and vendors out there have suffered some really horrific lead times, which led to a lot of lost opportunity in customers. So, it's not necessarily just the impact to everybody, seeing the revenue from shipments, but it's also actually what's the actual impact to the customer themselves. They'll have seen that delayed deployment really has created some lost opportunities. They may have had dependencies or applications that may have been generating new streams of revenue, or actually improving things like patient services in a hospital. So anything that we can do again to accelerate time to value and kind of give some guarantees around delivery is going to be, beneficial. The final thing that we see really is around workforce challenge, and particularly around talent acquisition has been a massive challenge in the market, particularly for skilled IT resource. And what we have seen is an increasing trend in people moving, for example, from the public sector, where it's, we've seen some well-documented strikes in the press recently, but around pay and conditions, and that's not, the IT part of those organizations isn't immune to that. And we've seen a huge amount of people moving from, for example, public sector into the private sector. So again, anything that we can do from a technological standpoint or an experience standpoint that helps customers maximize their human capital, their people, and actually allow them to do more with what they have is going to be a great benefit. So where do we come in from a Dell standpoint? So, and apologies for the barking dog at the moment, typically when you're recording. So from a cloud experience perspective, Dell really has three ways that we can help you. So the first one is you build your own. You go down the traditional model where you kind of choose from a full set of hardware and software products that we make for you. You can potentially finance that, through the customer or through a bank, potential finance, and you can wrap your services around it. Now, but the good thing about that is that you have complete control, working with your customer to understand what they need, what their business requirements are, and you design the solution appropriately. Moving slightly to the right, we have subscribe to a product. So when I look at these two options, subscribe to a product and subscribe to a service, this is really where we talk about Apex truly. So subscribe to a product is typically what we call Apex Custom. And here customers have that flexibility to choose again from whatever technology it is they want to consume, and actually right-size it, for their environment based on, their goals. And again, where we see this used a lot in our partners is particularly those partners who are very engaged with their customers in the design process. But the good thing about it is we can then take that solution and build it into a consumption-based model, working very closely with our financial teams. And again, you as a partner, you have the opportunity to wrap services around that, which is fantastic, in terms of extending the opportunity for you. The final one we have, as I mentioned, is subscribe to a service. We call these typically Apex Cloud Services or Console Services. And these are, again, different in the fact that you're actually buying more of a cloud-based outcome. You're not actually, designing a solution. What you are is consuming an offer. That offer could be storage as a service, where you actually literally say, I want to consume, say, 100 terabytes of storage. I want it to have a performance profile that looks a bit like this. And I want to do that over, let's say over 36 months. And I don't own that technology, which is the same for any of the subscription models. You actually consume that technology as opposed to buy that technology or own or lease that technology. And that's done in a kind of an online transactional fashion. And again, we have some additional services wrapped around that, which can either be provided by Dell, but also by partners as well. Now, for today, we're going to talk really around Flex on Demand, which is our most popular offer in the channel today. And in the Apex marketplace today, we see certainly that's probably accounts for probably 3/4 of all the subscriptions that we're doing today. And that's because it's an established product. It's been around for a while in the UK, but we also have a lot of experience and knowledge around selling that and working with customers to achieve that. Now, kind of covered that piece already. So this just touches on what the Apex portfolio looks like as a model. So again, from an Apex standpoint, think about Apex as really the brand that we utilize to effectively provide customers with consumption-based offers. So anything that you want to consume from us in an infrastructure group, solutions group, or ISG, as Ollie said at the start, perspective, but you want that in a consumption model, Apex is going to be the answer. Now, as part of that, we have something called the Apex Cloud Console, which is an online console where you can deploy, monitor, manager, the various different services. And some of those services you can build and actually buy through that console, whereas others are more customized, as is the case of Flex on Demand, where effectively you just manage your subscriptions. Now, if I look at the two options that we talked about at the start, we have subscribe to a product and subscribe to a service. The subscribe to a product offers, which includes Flex on Demand, is what we term Apex Custom. And we actually have two offers within that. We have Flex on Demand, which is a very customizable, fully configurable usage-based consumption model. But the great thing about that from a partner perspective is that we can do that where typically we're looking at an opportunity of around about 100K. So that's a pretty good entry point for this kind of solution. The average that we see in the UK and actually across EMEA is actually around about 250. Obviously, because there are some deals which are smaller, some which are larger, but that 250K is the average, 100K is the entry point. So just bear that in mind when you're considering it. We also have this model called Data Center Utility, which actually up until this quarter wasn't something that is available through channel partners, but it now will be via a referral model. That's typically where we are talking about an entry point of around about 10 million. So very different economies of scale. This is typically where we're working with, for example, like a global 100 type company who really want that true utility type model, whereas Flex on Demand gives us a lot of that, but in a much smaller footprint, which is great. Certainly from a partner opportunity, that's great. It gives you a lot of flexibility about what kinds of customers you can talk to. And obviously on the right-hand side, we've got the subscribe to a service offers. We have a number of offers, which again, are outcome-based. Like I mentioned, the example of the storage service, we do similar things around backup and cyber. Now, those aren't actually available right at this moment in the UK, for example, backup and cyber. However, the great thing is that anything that's not necessarily available as an outcome offer today in the UK, we can actually build that ourselves and actually do it as an Apex custom via Flex on Demand. So I think that the key thing is from a Flex perspective is that the world's your oyster. You can pretty much design any data center infrastructure solution that you like, and we can provide that consumption-based model on it. As I mentioned here, this just reiterates that the good thing about Flex on Demand is that the great thing that we see from a benefit perspective is actually just the way that we design it. We can deploy storage much faster. It says up to 92%, and I'll come on to the reason why that's the case later on in the presentation. But the good thing around that is, that also helps in terms of lowering the operational costs and actually reducing downtime associated with things like upgrades, migrations, and that kind of thing. So we can actually really make some great benefits to the customer and simplify their environment. Again, IDC did another study working with us. This is kind of just reiterating those two things we talked about just then. But again, the data that we talk about here isn't just something that we've kind of come up with in our marketing team. It's actually based on real customer data. So the average cost of storage operations per year is simply because we can streamline and simplify that environment from both a deployment perspective, an upgrade perspective. The faster time to deployment I'll talk about very shortly, simply because we operate on this concept of called a committed capacity and a buffer, or on-demand capacity. And I'll go into what that actually means in a moment. And the downtime perspective, again, is just about how we help simplify that, utilizing that elastic capacity we talk about. That really helps us capitalize on how we do this. Now, this is probably going to be the next slide, which is going to be the one which really explains this in probably a more simple format. Now, when we talk about flex on demand, we talk about these two concepts. One, which is committed capacity. Now, that's typically going to be a capacity that the customer signs up to from day one. This is what they definitively need to use and have access to, which is fine. However, many customers, they may have some uncertainty around, actually, yeah, we definitely need that minimum level, but we also have these times of year that we need more. Or they may say, actually, in 6 months' time or 9 months' time, we know we've got this project coming along, which is actually going to increase our capacity needs. And we want to minimize, actually, we see benefit to having that available kind of instantaneously. Some of the benefits we talk about that customers really love around hyperscale and public cloud is that elasticity, that ability to access those resources really, really fast, and not having to wait for deliveries, accelerating the time to value of that solution. Now, what we can do from our perspective is, again, as this is a Dell financed initiative, we can say, actually, okay, so if you know that, for example, you need 100 terabytes from day one, that's great, we can put that in. However, you may also need an extra 150 terabytes on the floor because you've got some uncertainty. So what we can do is work with that partner and the customer to actually work out what that baseline looks like. And what we can do is create that consumption model and a rate card. So effectively, you'll pay on a price per gigabyte per hour basis, for example. Now, the good thing is the committed capacity, which is that baseline, as I mentioned, the rate that you pay for that will be agreed. The good thing about the buffer is that you'll pay the same rate that you pay for the committed capacity. So it's not like you're going to pay any premium for that. It's actually based on exactly the same rate card. Now that gives great predictability to a customer. It means that they know they're not going to get stung by, the great example is everyone goes on holiday, use their phone abroad, and you get a paid, and you suddenly get your bill and you get a big shock because the rate is different. Yeah, it's not the case here. It's the same rate that we do. Now that's great, but also over time, the customer's needs may change. So what we can do is actually in that 9 months, so they say, actually, yeah, we started off at this, 100 terabytes, but now we need to actually definitively always have access to, say, 150. We can increase that baseline for them and recut it. And again, we can either increase the buffer if they need to, or keep the buffer where it is based on the life cycle and the need of their customer. Now, this is great because A, it gives them the ability to access things really quickly. B, it allows them to pay for what they use, not necessarily what they've got installed, which is a real nice thing that a lot of customers like. So their savings that they get there can be fantastic. And also it helps them reduce their risk. They've not got to wait extended lead times. Stuff's already on the floor, and they've not got to, incur additional downtime, for example, for expanding systems, that kind of stuff. So it really helps. The other good thing that we do, just for storage, data protection, and HCI, really, we don't do it for server right now, is this thing called an 85% billing cap. So basically, if you consume above 85% of the capacity, we don't charge you for that above that. We only charge you up to 85%. So again, that lowers some cost and some risk for the customer. The reason we do that is because very rarely, anyone who's been around enterprise storage for any degree of time will know, is that you get to a system capacity of around about 85% or 90%, you really need to consider upgrading that very quick. You get kind of testing the limits of the system because of the overheads that those systems tend to have typically. So when we talk about, when you address a customer, what are the limits, where do we start, that kind of thing, we kind of have this kind of very simple kind of three-step model. The first one is we talk around what product it is you want to consume. Now, you can consume multiple products, for example. It doesn't have to be just storage or just server. We can do both, but what you'll see is a different rate card for each one. However, the customer still benefits from the ability to A, have that as one solution, and B, utilize all the products in the Dell family. The next thing we do is select the committed capacity. So it can be as low as 40% for storage, but it does vary by product. So if you're talking about server and HCI, for example, we're talking more line around about 70% as a typical buffer capacity. And the last thing we do is select the usage term, which is, how many months we want to do that for. So at the moment, we do 12, 24, 36, 40, 60. Again, it varies by product. As for server, we typically start at 36 months rather than as low as 12. And then what we do is work very closely. So the team with Westcoast here would be working closely with our finance team. They would work with them to create that rate card. And then you would get your rate card back. And I think Larry's going to demonstrate that at the end as well, just give you some examples. So that kind of gives a brief overview of, kind of how you arrive at, what the possibilities are from a flex perspective. This is, where we see customer scenarios and the types of things that customers are trying to do with their, sorry about the dog there. I think there's a window cleaner around somewhere. But in terms of the scenarios that we see, we've got a number. And these are the kind of the 4 ones that we see most often than not. So the first one is around uncertain growth. So that you've got an initial volume. Over time, you might be migrating some systems over there and there's some growth in there. So again, we can build that flex model to work with you to do that. The second one is surprisingly, is cloud offload. So what we're talking about here is not offloading from the public cloud, but offloading to the public cloud. So initially, you may start off with a solution that starts off with very high consumption. Maybe not 90%, because we already said about 85% being the kind of the max that we want to get to. But over time, we want to gradually decrease that. So you start off consuming a lot, but over time, we gradually reduce and reduce and reduce and reduce. Because as we migrate more stuff to the public clouds, now they may have a strategy that says, actually, we want to get as much stuff on there as possible. There's always something that leaves, there's always some residual applications that can't migrate for whatever reason. So again, over time, we can, again, recut that so it makes sense for the customer. The other one that we see is around future consolidation or potentially cloud repatriation. So kind of going the other way. So consolidating various systems, but it's done in a phased process. So, we start off at 40, then move up to 70, for example, and grow steadily from there. And the one that was kind of on the slide before is more around that volatile usage. So if you've got, again, customers who have kind of peak utilization periods, which are kind of short and spiky, but for most of the year, they're at a fairly low baseline. Again, we can work with them to work out what's going to be the best rate to do that with. Now, in terms of the thresholds that we have, this just is a really kind of a very high level kind of qualification chart. But the key thing that we look at is, what's the minimum commit and where do we aim for? So from a server perspective, as I said, 70 to 80 is typical. We kind of look at 2 metrics of how we build, one which is called an activated node hour, where we look at where the CPU utilization is kind of 5% or above, typically on an hourly basis. Or if it's a VMware environment, we can look at monthly memory usage, which is another one. And as we said, then minimum deal size, as I said right at the start, we're talking around about 100K or potentially 20 units, whichever is lower. From a storage and data protection perspective, again, we can go as low as 40, which is great. So we'll measure normally on raw or usable consumed, depending on the product, 100K start point. Converged infrastructure, we don't see too much of that anymore. Really, from a Dell perspective, we talk about VX block as being the main technology that we'd see there, but that's kind of getting towards the end of its life cycle, and we see much more HCI now. HCI, we've got a number of options in there. So we've got, for example, VxRail, you can use PowerFlex, you can use XC if you're a Nutanix customer environment, and you can also use Azure Stack HCI. However, one little note is that Azure Stack HCI, we kind of treat that as a server right now. So we'd be using the same metrics that we use on servers, which is this concept of an activated node hour. And again, threshold the same, it's around about that 100K mark. As I said at the start, we have the Apex Cloud Console. Now, this is this kind of centralized management console that we have for most Apex services. From a Flex on Demand perspective, the key thing that you see there are the subscriptions that you have, and the billing and the invoicing, which is very important. But also you can also see that the kind of the capacity trending as well. So you can see actually how much are they consuming of their base capacity, how much they're consuming of the buffer capacity. So you can actually get a view on and working with them to actually understand, is there a point that we need to upgrade, downgrade, expand, extend, all those good things. Yeah. And lastly, the last couple of slides I want to spend some time is actually how we work with partners. Partnering around Apex is super important for us. We can't deliver half the stuff that we need to without our partners. And the key things that you can add are, there's a huge amount of service wrapper that partners can have alongside obviously the extensive relationships that you all have. So from a base perspective, some of the added services that you can look at, for example, are, if you're a hoster, obviously you have the ability to host the services on behalf of your customers. From an Apex perspective, we're not that fussy about it has to reside, with exactly directly with a customer. It can go to a hosting partner, no problem whatsoever. So long as we have a site ID and we can track and monitor it and meter it, that's not an issue. The one thing that we are more strict on is we can't, for example, have it on a piece of technology that's going to move around frequently, because that makes it effectively difficult to meter. So really, it's going to be somewhere that's going to be in one location, but it can be a location of the customer's choice. From a networking perspective, obviously, we're delivering infrastructure by this. It still needs plumbing. It still needs plugging in, integrating into the network and other services. You can add your full stack managed services around Apex as well. So you can add whatever lifecycle management services that you have, any application management, infrastructure management services that you do on behalf of your customers, and also any specialty services that you may have around vertical practices. For example, if you have a wrapper for specifically around, for example, financial services or healthcare, for example. Now, obviously, from a Dell perspective, the only thing that we ask is that any partners who are deploying Apex solutions have the requisite implementation certifications. So, for example, those of you already doing it with technologies like PowerStore or VxRail, it's the same ones. There's just some very small Apex extension modules that you have to do to allow you to make sure that you're able to integrate it, for example, with the metering engines. So that kind of talks about, the wider service opportunity that you have from an Apex perspective. Again, partners are important. We can't do this solely as Dell. It's not something that we, A, have an appetite for, or B, the amount of resources that we need to do. The great thing about partners is the reach that you have, the relationships you have, and the skill sets that you have. Now, on to that note, we have already a pretty lucrative partner program for partners in terms of how you get recognized by us for selling Apex solutions. However, what we've done from a Q2 perspective, which I'm going to cover now, is actually improve that, especially if you're a gold partner or a platinum partner. So I'm just going to share some very new kind of hot off the press details, because it was only actually live as of the end of last week, which talks about what we're doing. So on the left-hand side is the kind of what was in our Q1. So what you saw was we kind of had this concept of base rates or base rebates, and they are, as you can see there, 2% for a gold, 3% for a platinum, or 4% for titanium. However, from an Apex standpoint, we have these multipliers. Now that's really good. So for example, on data storage services, a gold partner, you'd have got 5 times 2%, which would have been 10% total, which is nice. Obviously, you're also free to make whatever upfront margin you like as normal. There's no, we absolutely can't dictate what you make. You absolutely have full control over that. And you can also see it changes depending on the offer. So private cloud and hybrid cloud are more of the cloud console services. And also we have Flex on Demand server there as well, which is again is a slightly lower rebate. Now, that was good, but also what you notice is this other model. So that's for reselling Apex. And Westcoast obviously primed to help you do that. We also have the referral model, which you'll notice is 10%. Now, before that was last year, that was actually higher. The reason we've reduced it is because we want more and more partners to transact via resale and move away from referral. Referral was only ever a temporary short-term measure, while we actually got the kind of the contractual heavy lifting done in behind the scenes. That's now been done. We've got distributors like Westcoast onboarded to support, which means that we can absolutely transact by the resale model, which is brilliant. Now, the other thing that's great from a program perspective, which isn't actually mentioned on here, is for those of you who are concerned about your tier status, any Apex sales retire at 3 times. So for example, if you do a 500k Apex deal, that will count as 1.5 million against your tier status, which is a really nice thing. So a really great way of you being able to either preserve your existing tier status or potentially make the leap to the next level of tier in the Dell Partners program. Now from Q2, the main thing that we've done is actually change the base rebate for gold and platinum. So titanium remains the same, but for gold partners, we're now increasing it up to 3%, for platinum up to 3.5%. So again, what you can see here, the impact of the multipliers is really interesting. So the flex on demand storage, which is really what we're talking around here mostly, a gold partner will see that increase by 5% from 10 up to 15, which is really good and really attractive, I think. And again, the way we do this, that rebate is obviously, we talk about Apex as being a kind of annuity type service. It's something that you consume on a monthly basis. What we do from an Apex standpoint and how we recognize our partners is we look at something what we call the committed contract value. So that is what's the value of the contract over the time of the term. So for example, if it's over 3 years, that all the monthlies add up to, for example, 300k. That's what your CCV is, and that's what you get your rebate paid on. Now we pay this with, I'm going to say this at the moment, the plan is within 30 days of the last piece of equipment shipping. So if all that 300k's worth of equipment ships out within 30 days, you're basically going to get that back from us, that rebate, which is a fairly fast time for us. And that's because we're leveraging all the infrastructure of our Dell Financial Services team behind the scenes. So I think it's just wants to highlight there before I kind of hand over to the team from Westcoast, was just around, how lucrative it is now for partners to engage with us on Apex. Not only does it help you in terms of margins and profitability, but it also helps you in terms of your tier status. So I know we've got time for Q&A at the end. So I think that's the plan, is we're going to hold off for Q&A until the end, but I'm going to hand over now to the team from Westcoast. And thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Adam. That was excellent. Very clear, concise, in terms of explaining, what Apex is made up of and some of the stuff around the channel right now. I'm first off, I'll just start reflecting on one of your first slides, actually. 80% growth over the next 3 years for consumption-based infrastructure. And that's not 80% over 3 years, that's CAGR, compound annual growth rate. As a sales leader, I hear this loud and clear, louder than the shirt I'm wearing today. And what's relevant for partners is, now in Q2, the rewards are even greater for selling these services, right? So a huge market opportunity out there that's very much still in its infancy. So a very exciting time to be part of this journey. The challenges you mentioned that customers are facing, economic, workforce challenges, supply chain challenges, consumption-based infrastructure really does help to address these. So it's great to kind of find that nice fit for end customers if they're facing those challenges. But more so than ever today, customers have so many different ways they can consume technology. It's our jobs as trusted advisors, us at Westcoast, Dell, our partners that are on the call today, is to help guide those customers, down the right path, right? And I honestly know that Dell Apex is going to be that right path for some of those customers. So it's just so important that we help spread the word and make this easy for people to understand. Apex is a great building block for partners. In one of your slides earlier, you spoke about, what partners can kind of do with Apex, adding their own services. It's so interesting to find out every partner's skill sets and what they kind of want to do with these services. So like I said, really exciting time. I'm just going to cover a few slides just from the kind of value that Westcoast can add around this as well. We've created a program specifically to help partners get Apex ready. Now, moving to consumption-based IT sales from traditional CapEx, there is a bit more complexity involved. So we've created a framework to make this as easy as possible and to identify, what steps partners are going to need to think about during this process. getting them ready to be able to sell and support these services long term. We kind of divide it up in 3 phases. How we help you kind of build your initial platform, how we can support you through that process, and ultimately how we can help you sign and scale your consumption-based IT deals. I'll just mention a few of these points just to go in a bit of detail. With these services, there is a contract that flows down through the channel. So some terms and conditions, with anything like this that are going to be part of the agreement. So we've created a whole contract suite that we can give you as a partner. It'll be the agreement between Westcoast and yourselves, some templates for how to create agreements for your end customers, and an example of what the scope of work, so the schedules will look like for these. So you've got all the tools to work with your legal team in advance to get everything prepared so that you're ready to transact when you find these opportunities. With the legal stuff, we can support you there. There might be queries and questions. I spend a lot of my time reading contracts, probably more than I envisioned when I started this role. So we're very, very well versed in these, so we are able to support there as well. And as part of that, we want to help our partners do joint business planning, right? Sitting down with you, understanding, why do you want to look at Apex? What's right in Apex for your business? What is the market you're going to go after? What does your customer base look like? Where are the sweet spots, etc. So we can pull in the right resources to help you build out that plan. We've got a wealth of experience selling consumption-based IT solutions going back, 3-4 years. So all of the things we've learned over that time, we're happy to help share with you to help you get off the ground as quickly as possible. A big part of this is creating your own marketing strategy as well. We've got an excellent marketing team here at Westcoast, and we're happy to help get you resources and collateral and give you all the tools you need to create your own messaging around that. We can deliver sales and technical enablement. Like today is, I guess, is kind of a combination of that at a general scale, but we can deliver targeted things as well if you've got specific things you want to look at. We can help you with scoping workshops. Dell's got a great tool called Live Optics that you can run in a customer's environment. What does that give us? That gives us some amazing data that we can go away and look at Apex and look at sizing it and have that conversation around the growth and the unpredictability of your customers' workloads. With all those pieces in place, we can put forward an Apex solution if it makes sense for that solution. The sizing assessments is using Live Optics. And we can help with the design piece as well with our pre-sales team. So we've got some excellent resource here as well. When it comes to signing and scaling, with moving away from transactional to these longer term relationships with your customers, it's important to manage that relationship going forward. A regular part of what we do with partners is helping you to manage your pipeline, and not just existing opportunities, but ones that you've already transacted, because ultimately with these services, you want to be having regular cadences with your customers, talking about change orders, making sure they're at the right commitment level. There's so many opportunities in here to deliver them more value, but B, grow these opportunities over time. And that's something we can help with there. Just the general kind of order management, from placing the order all the way to the delivery, the services installed, etc. So those are just a few that I want to talk through there. But ultimately, we can help you from day one to the point where you're transacting and building and supporting those customers regularly with Apex. Next slide, please. There we go. Right. So another thing I just want to talk through quickly, what are some traits of a successful Dell Apex partner? And what do these mean, right? Sales off sales cycle. So with these consumption-based IT solutions, it's very rare that you're going to have a customer saying, I need 20 servers next week. I know exactly what I need. To go in with this messaging after that fact, the close rate is not going to be optimal. The reason being, you need to start these conversations early, plant the seeds, explain to them the benefits of moving to these types of models, so that when they start planning for the future, planning, budgeting, we can lead with that consumption-based messaging, show them the benefits of having that, those analytics around, what they're actually consuming, having that extra capacity there for growth, etc. So it's a great opportunity to engage customers early, run things like Live Optics, look at their environment, help create a business case for moving to a new infrastructure instead of waiting for them to prompt you. Provides much more value in terms of the engagement as well. The third one, creates your own offerings using Apex. Like I said earlier, Apex can be a building block, right? You can purchase Apex Flex on Demand, for a customer. You can wrap your own managed services in that. You can ultimately use that to deliver a unique solution to you as a partner. So it is like a Lego brick of the solution. So it's really interesting to see what some partners are going to build on top of this. Understanding your customers' workloads and ultimately understanding your customers' business is super key. This is moving away from a speeds and feeds conversation to a business outcomes conversation, right? What is the value in having this extra capacity, this financial kind of commitment in terms of what costs are going to be? That's much bigger than an IT conversation. So it's a big part of being a successful Apex partner. Offering those live optics assessments from the beginning, right? Lead with that, get in there, get that data, generate pipeline instead of waiting for opportunities to come through. We would recommend, nominating an Apex champion, maybe one in sales, one in pre-sales. We can help skill them up, teach them everything we know. There's loads of great collateral and resource out there as well. Just becoming that kind of Apex SME within the organization. And the other one here just to talk through is qualify opportunities in and out early. With these consumption-based IT solutions, there are certain customers that are a great fit, some that are not. In order to use your time efficiently, we can help you kind of look at that qualification early on and figure whether it's going to be a fit based on that customer requirement, so that you're only investing your time in the opportunities that are going to have a higher close rate. And we can guide you through what some of that criteria looks like. Next slide, please, Adam. So I'll just turn up a couple of examples of what the quotes look like. For me, I'm a visual person. It's nice to see, what am I going to get? What am I going to do with this as a partner, right? I'm not going to talk through this line by line, but what you do get here is on the right, you get a rate card. This gives you loads of different pricing options for the term, the committed capacity. So you can run through different permutations based on the customer requirement, right? What's worse than having to get like 20 different quotes for a solution for all these very slightly changed things? You're going to get this tool, this output that you can model however you want. What you do get is a couple of examples. We can see here scenario one. If the customer was to start at 50% fixed, stay on that as their data grows. We know that what the kind of total contract value would be there. But in scenario two, if they start at 40% and then they ladder up that increase as they go along, where they know they're going to have that commit for the storage, what you can see here is by using that method, they're going to save some money by raising that minimum commit as they go along and actually starting at a smaller one. So it's a prompt to get you thinking about having this kind of longer term engagement, these regular cadences with your customers. Scenario one, it's set it and forget it. But you could have actually delivered more value to your customer by helping them to monitor their commit level and making sure that's optimized. So yeah, some really good charts and stuff you'll get there to generate that conversation with your customer. Next slide, please, Adam. This is an example of a server quote, which is slightly different. This one was just done based on the node hours, which was one of the two criteria that were listed earlier. You do get the rate card once again, so you can work with a few different options when quoting customers as well. And you get the kind of hour price for the unit rate as well. So if you were going to have the servers turned off during weekends, for example, you can factor that into your calculations and try and tweak the model where it makes the most sense for the customer's requirements. So yeah, you really do get a great set of data to work through to create solutions here. Next slide, please, Adam. And this is just a more kind of generic slide around how Westcoast can help you win as a partner. This isn't specific to Apex, to Dell. You can see we've got some other kind of badges on here from our pre-sales teams. But I just want to take a second to remind partners that we are really there to help you win, all the way from the initial kind of consultative stage, which is really relevant to these as a service offerings, that early engagement piece, but all the way through to supporting you post sales. And that, something to touch on here, right? Asset recycling. We haven't even said sustainability once in this whole presentation, which pretty good. But nowadays, and especially with consumption-based IT solutions, sustainability should be front of mind with customers, and a big part of that is helping them dispose those assets that they've got today. So, we will always help guide you in that conversation, that holistic solutioning, and really trying to understand your customers' sustainability requirements as well. For example, if it's all about reducing power consumption, let's look at the most kind of converged solution as possible. Sorry. If it's just about cost, we can go with some less dense rack servers, for example, right? So it's leading with that consultative conversation there. And there's loads of other stuff we can help with in here as well. I think I've mentioned most of these today, so I don't need to go through them in loads of detail. What I will say is not every partner is going to use us for every piece of this. We would love it if you all did. We'd probably need to hire about twice as many people in our operations team. But the key is to augment you as a partner. Where are your gaps? Where can we help provide coverage? If you want us to do your deal workers for you, we can do that. We've got a solution. You want us to do your pre-sales, do the bombs? We've got that. We've got some great people. So it's just understanding you as a partner and where we can help work side by side with you. Next slide, please, Adam. And this is actually one that I stole from your deck, but I will talk through it. We've covered a lot around Apex today. We've got some great slides here, links to resources. So we'd recommend partners have a look at all of these. There's lots of good content here for further learning on Apex. And we can also kind of answer questions directly as well. Is there anything particular on this slide you'd like to point out, Adam?
I think actually some of the great things are there. If you're ever doing things, for example, any customer call outs, there's some great conversation guides there. So the conversation guide is really good. There's various different kind of details around some of the typical conversations that you'd have with a customer, what the objections might be, kind of really helps you pull out what some of the key benefits of going down the Apex route will be. So I think the conversation guides are a really useful asset, definitely. Also, within there are some great things around, for example, if you're doing any digital campaigns or events, there's kind of various different event kits, digital kits that you can download for, backgrounds, all that kind of good stuff as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then I think the final slide. In terms of how to contact us, how to engage with Westcoast, we've got a dedicated Apex alias, which is apex@westcoast.co.uk. Any questions, opportunities, pre-sales engagements, operational questions, you want to see the contracts, that email is the one to go to. We've got all of our Apex experts kind of on that shared alias. So we'll make sure you get a response quickly, and we can work this side to pull in the resources that are relevant to your request. And I think that is it. So we've got some time for Q&A. So we can open the floor. Anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the box.
I see John asked a question.
Yeah, Adam's already responded to that
so
one.
that was a question about, are customers able effectively to purchase at the end of the term? So at the minute, their answer is no. And John was asking is that going to change? So I don't know is the honest answer. I will go and find out. I suspect it won't, simply because it's a Dell owned asset. It's not like a lease, for example, where the customer may keep title. But we'll ask the question and see what comes back and come back to you, John, if that's okay on that one. But I understand the question and the need. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions from anyone? Don't be shy. I mean, Adam's explanation was great, so I don't doubt there could be any questions. But
well, unless the dog was interrupting a bit. But okay.
Yeah, if anyone wants to take anything offline, just get us on the apex@westcoast.co.uk email address. We'll come to you separately. And again, if you need an on-site presence to go through this with your teams, let us know. Book us in. We'll get out and see you individually. But lots to talk about, lots to understand. But the relevance is incredible, and we're just happy to be in the market with you. So thank you for supporting us. If any more.
All right.
Wonderful. In that case, you can have a few minutes back.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.